The luxury hourglass sits on the CEO's desk, catching the sunset like a trophy made of glass. But the danger is not the sand. The danger is realizing you built an empire around speed, leverage, and control, while the one thing disappearing in front of you never asked for your permission. Most people think they are managing time because their calendar is full and their phone never stops lighting up. But a packed life can still be an unconscious life. A successful man can own the penthouse, the skyline, the company, the watch on his wrist, and still feel something cold move through him when the last grains begin to fall. No sound. No warning. Just sand obeying gravity. So what do you do when the object in front of you tells the truth your ambition has been avoiding? This is where samurai discipline begins, not by escaping time, but by learning to stand fully inside the moment that is still yours. He is not the kind of man people interrupt. In the penthouse office, even the silence seems expensive. The carpet is thick enough to swallow footsteps. The windows run from floor to ceiling, holding the city below like a private exhibit. Far beneath him, brake lights begin to gather in the avenues, thin red lines moving toward bridges, suburbs, dinner tables, ordinary lives. Up here, the air is cooled to the exact temperature he prefers. The leather chair fits his back. The desk has no clutter. Even the pen beside his hand looks chosen by someone who understands power. And in the center of it all, the hourglass keeps emptying. He bought it years ago from a gallery in Milan, not because he needed it, but because it looked like something a man at his level should own. Polished brass frame. Hand-blown crystal. Sand the color of old champagne. It sat in his office as a statement. A beautiful object. A quiet flex. A reminder to visitors that time, like everything else in the room, belonged to him. But tonight, it does not look owned. Tonight, it looks free. The last grains slide through the narrow throat without effort. They do not speed up because he is impatient. They do not slow down because he is rich. They do not pause because an acquisition is closing, or because the board is waiting, or because his name is on buildings downtown. They simply fall. No sound. That is the part that unsettles him most. The flow is soundless. The city hums behind sealed glass. A helicopter drifts somewhere above the river. His phone glows once, face down, with a message he has trained himself not to check until he decides it deserves his attention. But the sand does not compete for the room. It does not announce itself. It does not ask to be prioritized. It just leaves. For most of his life, leaving was something he controlled. Employees left with severance packages. Competitors left the market. Old partners left meetings with his terms in their folders. Even regret, when it appeared, was handled like a weak department, renamed, outsourced, buried under the next objective. He was good at motion. Good at speed. Good at turning discomfort into strategy. That is the first confrontation. Not with an enemy. Not with a rival CEO across a conference table. Not with a journalist looking for blood in the quarterly report. The confrontation is with a small object on his desk that refuses to flatter him. The hourglass does not care that he is ambitious. It does not care that ambition saved him once. It does not care that he came from less, built more, woke before dawn, skipped lunches, answered emails from hotel bathrooms, and learned to make decisions while other people were still asking for permission. All of that may be true. Some of it may even be honorable. But none of it buys another grain. His jaw tightens before he notices it. One hand rests on the edge of the desk, two fingers pressing into the polished wood. He feels the strange need to do something. Flip the hourglass. Check the phone. Call someone. Approve something. Make the room move again so he does not have to feel the stillness. That is how the shadow works in a man like this. It does not appear as weakness. It appears as productivity. It tells him, keep moving. It tells him, one more deal. One more quarter. One more number that proves the sacrifice was intelligent. One more public win to cover the private absence. It tells him that if he keeps producing enough evidence of success, he will not have to stand in front of the simple fact that life has been passing through the narrowest part of the glass the entire time. Zanshin is attention after the strike, before the strike, and inside the small space between both. It is the disciplined awareness that does not abandon the present just because the mind wants a louder battlefield. In this office, there is no sword. No ancient courtyard. No dramatic enemy. There is only a CEO, a sunset, a silent hourglass, and the first honest moment he has not been able to negotiate. The city turns gold, then copper. The glass wall takes his reflection and lays it over the skyline. For a second, he can see both at once, the empire outside and the man inside it. The man looks older than the brand photos. Not broken. Not ruined. Just older in a way money has been polite enough not to mention. The skin at the corners of his eyes. The slight stiffness in his neck from too many flights and too many late rooms with blue screens burning into his face. The wedding ring no longer on his hand, though the pale mark from years of wearing it has not fully disappeared. The framed magazine cover on the wall says visionary. The hourglass says temporary. And the hard part is that both are true. A less disciplined mind would turn this into drama. It would rush to guilt. It would punish him with memories. It would make him hate the very ambition that carried him here. But samurai discipline does not ask a man to become sentimental just because he has finally become aware. It asks for something cleaner and more difficult. See clearly. Do not decorate the truth. Do not attack it either. He looks at the hourglass and feels the old reflex rise, prove, control, acquire, extend. Somewhere in his mind, the language of business tries to invade the moment. Efficiency, optimization, legacy, return. Terms that have helped him command rooms and shape outcomes. But they shrink in front of the sand. They are useful words in useful places. They are not large enough for this. Because the pain in the room is not that he failed. The pain is that he succeeded at many things and still cannot purchase the one thing he spent most carelessly. That realization is quiet enough to be missed by anyone who only respects noise. It does not smash through the door. It does not humiliate him. It waits beside the hourglass until he stops pretending not to see it. His phone lights again. This time he turns it over. Not to escape. Just to see. A calendar notification, dinner with investors, moved from 7 o'clock to 8:30. Beneath it, an old thread from his son, still unanswered from 3 days ago. Nothing dramatic. No accusation. Just a photo of a college campus at dusk and a short line, thought you'd like the architecture. He had seen it between meetings. He had meant to reply. Then the day had taken him. Or maybe he had given himself to the day because the day was easier to manage than a small, human message that asked for presence instead of performance. His thumb hovers over the screen. There it is again, the choice between motion and attention. The untrained mind calls presence inefficient because presence cannot always be measured. It cannot be graphed for the board. It does not make a headline. It does not compound in an account where other people can admire it. So the ambitious man learns to dismiss it. He tells himself the big sacrifices are for the people he loves. He tells himself there will be time later to become available. Later, when the company stabilizes. Later, when the market opens. Later, when the next crisis passes. But the hourglass has no respect for later. That is why an object can become a teacher. Not because it is mystical. Not because the glass has wisdom hidden inside it. Because it does what human beings avoid. It keeps showing the same truth without raising its voice. The CEO stands in a room built from decisions. Every surface around him testifies to discipline of a certain kind. He has practiced focus. He has practiced sacrifice. He has practiced endurance. But tonight the hourglass reveals the missing edge in that discipline. Attention. Not attention as a tool for winning. Attention as a form of respect for the life still passing through his hands. The last grains fall. He watches them gather at the bottom, joining all the others that have already crossed over. The top chamber is almost empty now, a clean glass sky with only a few particles left clinging to the slope. He does not flip it yet. For once, he lets an ending be an ending. And in that small refusal to rush, the confrontation becomes clear. He cannot buy more grains, but he can stop wasting the ones still falling. Training begins before he knows what to do with the realization. It begins while his thumb is still hovering over the message, while the sunset is thinning across the glass, while the last grains of sand sit at the bottom like a verdict no one said out loud. He does not need a new philosophy. He needs to stop moving for 3 honest seconds. That is harder for him than most people would understand. In his world, stillness has always looked like weakness. A quiet room meant opportunity was being missed. An unanswered email meant someone else might take ground. An empty minute felt like a leak in the system. He learned to treat space as something to fill, silence as something to manage, and time as something to conquer before it conquered him. So the first act of discipline is not dramatic. He leaves the phone face up on the desk and does not touch it. The screen dims by itself. His thumb lowers. His hand stays there, open, useless for a moment, and that uselessness irritates him. It makes him feel slow. It makes him feel exposed. But he lets the irritation pass through the room without giving it a job. He does not convert it into a call. He does not bury it under a task. He watches the feeling arrive, make its argument, and fail to take command. The hourglass remains in front of him. The top chamber is empty now. The bottom is full. The brass frame catches the last line of sun, a thin blade of light along its edge. He has seen that object 1,000 times without seeing it. Tonight, he lets his eyes stay with it long enough for the mind to stop using it as decoration. This is the second movement of training. Let one object bring you back from the empire in your head. He looks at the glass curve, the narrow throat, the small hill of sand gathered below. He does not turn it over. Not yet. The old habit wants to reset the image immediately, to make the loss reversible, to perform control with one easy motion. But he understands, without needing to say it, that flipping the hourglass too soon would be another form of running. So he sits with the full bottom chamber. He lets the ending be visible. Outside, the skyline shifts from gold to steel blue. Windows in other towers begin to light up, one office at a time, each square holding some private version of ambition. Someone is closing a laptop. Someone is lying to their family about leaving soon. Someone is eating dinner from a paper container under fluorescent light and calling it temporary for the 7th year in a row. He knows that story too well. His shoulders drop by half an inch. It is not peace. It is the body getting tired of pretending the mind is invincible. He notices the tightness behind his eyes, the shallow breath sitting high in his chest, the pressure in his jaw. He does not make a lesson out of it. He just notices. That is Zanshin. The return of attention to the exact place where life is happening. Then he puts both feet flat on the floor. Not because it fixes anything. Because a man who has spent years living in projections needs to feel the ground under him again. The left shoe presses into the carpet. The right heel settles. His fingers uncurl from the edge of the desk. He draws one slow breath through the nose and lets it leave without forcing it to become impressive. The shadow tries another argument. You can handle this later. It sounds reasonable. It always has. Later has been the most expensive word in his vocabulary. Later let him miss dinners without feeling cruel. Later let him replace presence with provision. Later let him confuse being needed at work with being known at home. Later made every absence feel temporary until the absences became the shape of his life. He looks at the message from his son again. Thought you'd like the architecture. There is no accusation in it. That almost makes it worse. Anger would have given him something to defend against. This gives him only a small door he left unopened. His first impulse is to write too much. To explain the delay. To mention meetings. To make affection sound efficient and responsible. He can already feel the CEO voice trying to enter the text box, that polished voice that knows how to reduce discomfort without fully entering it. He stops. Training is the refusal to let the wrong version of you answer. He sets the phone down again, not away from him, not hidden, just down. Then he turns the hourglass halfway in his hand and feels the cool weight of it. The object is heavier than it looks. The brass has warmed slightly from the sun, while the glass remains cool against his palm. That contrast holds him in the room better than any productivity system ever has. Warm frame. Cool glass. Sand at rest. He names what is real, silently. Penthouse. Sunset. Hourglass. Message. Sun. Nothing in that list can be delegated. The battle shrinks. He does not need to repair years in one text. He does not need to become a different man before nightfall. He does not need to turn remorse into a dramatic vow that will collapse under the next emergency. That is another trap of the ambitious mind. When it finally sees a neglected part of life, it wants a grand correction. A speech. A gesture. A new system. Something large enough to make guilt feel productive. But attention does not return through grandiosity. It returns through the next clean act. He opens the message. His thumb pauses above the keyboard. For once, he does not dictate. He types slowly enough to feel each word before it becomes an image on the screen. You were right. I do like it. The west entrance is beautiful. I'm sorry I missed this when you sent it. He reads it once. The sentence feels plain. Almost too plain. No corporate warmth. No performance. No attempt to buy intimacy with eloquence. He adds one more line. Tell me what made you notice it. Then he sends it. The room does not change. The company does not collapse. The skyline does not applaud him for being human. That is important. Discipline in the real world rarely comes with music. Most of the time, you do the right small thing and the room stays the same. The test is whether you can respect the act without needing a reward loud enough to prove it mattered. He places the phone beside the hourglass, not on top of papers, not hidden under the leather folder, but beside it. Message and object. Relationship and time. The thing he can still answer placed next to the thing he can never buy back. Then he turns the hourglass over. This time it is not a reset. It is a vow made without theater. The sand begins to fall again through the narrow center, soundless as before. But now the soundlessness is different. Earlier, it accused him. Now it trains him. Each grain becomes a small correction to the old fantasy that life will wait until ambition is satisfied. He watches for 10 grains. Not because 10 is sacred. Because 10 is enough to practice not leaving. His eyes stay with the flow. His breath follows its pace. The mind reaches for tomorrow's meeting, and he brings it back to the glass. The mind reaches for the unanswered reports, and he brings it back to the desk. The mind reaches for the fear that maybe he has already lost too much, and he brings it back to the single grain passing through now. Now is not generous. Now is exact. That is why it saves people who are willing to meet it without bargaining. He reaches for a notepad, the heavy cream paper he normally uses for negotiation terms and deal structures. At the top, he writes one line, not for the board, not for a speech, not for anyone else to frame. One grain at a time. Under it, he writes 3 things he will not outsource tomorrow. Call my son before the first meeting. Eat dinner without the phone. Watch the hourglass before opening email. He almost laughs at how small it looks. A man with thousands of employees writing down how to eat dinner like a beginner. But the laughter does not turn cruel. It stays honest. Maybe that is what he is tonight. A beginner in the part of life he assumed would wait for him. The ritual is not complicated. Every evening, when the sun touches the glass, he will turn the hourglass once and sit through the first fall of sand without touching the phone. He will name the room. He will name the person he has been postponing. He will choose one human act before the next professional demand. Not because business is evil. Not because ambition is shameful. Because attention must be trained where neglect has become automatic. The hourglass keeps flowing. Its beauty is no longer a flex. It is a boundary. It tells him, this much is passing. Be here for it. And for the first time in a long time, he does not treat that command as an interruption. The next evening, the penthouse office looks almost the same. Same glass walls. Same thick carpet. Same skyline leaning into sunset with its beautiful indifference. Same leather chair waiting behind the desk. Same city below, tightening into traffic, appointments, elevators, dinner reservations, missed calls, and people carrying private burdens under clean shirts. The company is still demanding. The market has not become kind. There are still documents on his desk that require judgment, still people who expect certainty from him, still numbers that can move millions of dollars before breakfast. Nothing outside has been magically repaired. That matters. Because the old version of him would have used that as proof that nothing internal mattered either. He would have walked into the room, seen the same pressures waiting, and surrendered to the same machinery. One notification. One urgent call. One small excuse. Then the whole evening gone again, swallowed by motion that looked responsible from the outside and empty from the inside. But tonight, he notices the hourglass before he notices the phone. That is the first sign. Not enlightenment. Not redemption. Just a shift in sequence. The eyes go to the object before they go to the screen. The hand pauses before it performs. The body enters the room before the role takes over. The luxury hourglass sits where he left it, no longer centered as a decoration for visitors, but turned slightly toward his chair. The brass frame holds the last amber light of the day. The glass gives back a thinner reflection of his face, broken by the curve. Sand rests in the lower chamber from yesterday's turning, quiet and complete. He stands beside the desk without sitting down. For a moment, the old pressure rises with perfect timing. A message from legal. A calendar alert. A flagged email from the board chair. A clean little stack of reasons to leave himself again. His jaw starts to tighten. He feels it sooner this time. That is the difference training makes. It does not erase the reflex. It lets him catch the reflex before it becomes a life. He places the phone face down, but not with disgust. The phone is not the enemy. Work is not the enemy. Ambition is not the enemy. The enemy is the unconscious bargain where every present moment gets sold to the next demand, and the man doing the selling calls it success because the invoice looks impressive. He takes off his suit jacket and lays it over the chair. Slow enough to feel the fabric leave his shoulders. He loosens his tie, not because he is quitting the role, but because he is remembering there is a human being under it. Then he puts both feet flat on the carpet, just like the night before. Penthouse. Sunset. Hourglass. Breath. The list is shorter now. More accurate. He turns the hourglass. The sand begins again. No sound. Yesterday, the silence felt like judgment. Tonight, it feels like a room being cleared. Each grain passes through the narrow throat with the same calm indifference, and he understands something he could not have understood while trying to conquer time. The grain does not become meaningful because he controls it. It becomes meaningful because he witnesses it while it is still passing. A reply from his son came late last night. It was not emotional. It was not cinematic. It did not fix years of half attention. It was just a few lines about the campus, the stonework, an old library entrance, a professor who had mentioned the architect during orientation. Then one sentence at the end, "Didn't think you'd ask." He read that line 3 times. Not because it was cruel. Because it was fair. That is the part still sitting in him now as the sand falls. The residual weight. The cost that does not disappear because a man finally has one honest evening. There are conversations he cannot replay. There are dinners already missed. There are moments where someone looked for him and found only his assistant, his voicemail, his explanation, his money. He does not pretend otherwise. Samurai discipline does not turn regret into theater. It does not ask a man to punish himself until punishment looks like character. It asks him to let the truth stand in the room without flinching, then choose the next action with clean hands. So he writes one sentence on the notepad. Ask before advising. He looks at it and feels how foreign it is. In business, he is paid to answer. At home, maybe he has too often answered before he listened. Solved before he noticed. Provided before he was present. The hourglass keeps falling, and the old champagne-colored sand looks less like wealth now and more like attention made visible. His phone vibrates against the desk. He does not move. Not because the message is unimportant. Because he has trained himself to stop treating every vibration as a command. A disciplined man does not become unreachable. He becomes properly reachable. There is a difference, and it has taken him too long to learn it. The last band of sun slides off the brass frame. The city darkens into blue glass and electric windows. His reflection becomes clearer. Not flattering. Clear. He sits down and opens the message thread with his son. The CEO in him wants to schedule the connection. Put it on the calendar. Build a system. Make the relationship efficient enough to survive his life. There may be a place for calendars. There may be a place for structure. But not before presence. He types. I have 10 minutes before dinner. I don't want to use them pretending I'm not rushed. Can I call you and just hear more about the campus? He almost deletes the middle sentence. Too exposed. Too plain. Too unlike the man people expect to see on magazine covers and quarterly calls. He sends it anyway. Then he waits. The hourglass continues falling beside the phone. For the first time, the two objects do not feel like enemies. The phone can carry a human voice. The hourglass can teach him not to treat that voice as another item to process. When the call comes through, he answers standing by the window. He does not pace. That is another small change. He used to walk during every call, as if movement could prove importance. Tonight he stands still enough to hear the faint lift in his son's voice when he starts describing the old stone archway near the west entrance. The details are modest. Brick color. Late light. The way the campus felt bigger than expected. Nothing urgent. Nothing profitable. Nothing that would impress a room full of investors. And because it is not useful, it is precious. The CEO catches himself preparing a comment about networking, internships, future opportunities. He lets the comment pass unsaid. His fingers rest against the cool glass of the hourglass instead. The sand is still moving. So is the voice on the phone. Both can be missed by a man addicted to arriving somewhere else. He asks one question. Then another. He hears more than information. He hears the small surprise of someone being given room. No applause arrives. No wound closes completely. No past rearranges itself to make him feel noble. But when the call ends, the office is not the same room it was yesterday. The desk is still expensive. The skyline is still high. The hourglass is still emptying. Only now, he is not using the room to hide from the truth. He is using the truth to stand differently inside the room. The bottom chamber fills grain by grain. He watches it without reaching to flip it too soon. He knows the old hunger will return tomorrow. The urge to optimize, to postpone, to buy his way out of discomfort. It will return because one ritual does not erase a lifetime of momentum. But momentum can be interrupted. A life can be reclaimed in the same way it was lost, one repeated act at a time. He places the phone beside the hourglass again. Not above it. Not beneath it. Beside it. Then he writes one more line under yesterday's note. Time does not obey wealth. Attention obeys training. Somewhere in your own life, there is an hourglass on the desk. Maybe it is not made of brass and crystal. Maybe it is a child waiting for a real answer, a dinner cooling on the kitchen table, a quiet drive home where you keep reaching for your phone because silence feels too honest. Maybe it is one more sunset you barely noticed because your mind was already negotiating with tomorrow. You do not need to hate ambition to become awake. You do not need to walk away from responsibility to recover your life. But you do need one small ritual that tells the truth. This moment is passing, and no amount of success will bring it back untouched. So tonight, before the next demand takes your name, pause. Look at one thing fully. Answer one person honestly. Mastery begins when the smallest detail becomes worthy of your full attention.